Hi, welcome to Azure User Group Sweden. Hi, Håkan.
Hi, Jonah. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How about you? Like,
Yeah,
you have a great
yeah.
weather where you are right now?
Well, actually, winter returned here, so now it's snow again.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I think last Tuesday, I was like walking on sneakers in the path with my dog Lawrence, and then I was surprised like the other day or yesterday it snowed all day, so it's like winter has returned. Looks like winter is coming again. But to our audience, I hope that you're doing great, having a great Saturday wherever you're watching us from your sofa. Outside, if you have a great weather, but we're happy that you're joining us today in our session, and we have a great topic and an amazing speaker joining us today. But before we start, let me share about my community leader, Håkan Silvernagel. He is uh, Microsoft MVP for AI. He works as an AI expert and specialist at Miles in Norway. He is a community leader, international public speaker, an MCT, and also leading and collaborating with .NET Norwegian User Group, AI 42, and AI School, and other communities within the Nordics. So it's an honor to have him as well as my co-leader in this community.
Yeah, thank you, Jonah. And I'm also very proud here to be able to present Jonah Anderson. She's the founder of our meetup. She's a Microsoft Azure MVP and also Microsoft certified trainer. She is a mentor, a podcast host, an international public speaker, and she is also a book author for O'Reilly on Azure. And in her daily job, she works as a senior Azure consultant at Solidify.
Thank you, Håkan, and welcome everyone that are new and just met us in this session. And welcome to the returnees as well for the members. But before we start and bring in our guest today, let me just share to everyone about our code of conduct. So at Azure User Group Sweden, we follow a community code of conduct where we expect everyone to be nice and friendly, respectful to others in our live chat, even our, after session fika at Zoom. Be curious and open to share your ideas regarding the topic, and be inclusive in your comments and questions. And if you have suggestions or feedback for the code of conduct, feel free to reach out to me and Hokan via LinkedIn. And then we also have like a fika session coming up. So if our time runs out in 60 minutes, you're welcome to join us in a private discussion with me and Håkan and our guest speaker to ask questions and just mingle with your favorite drink, fika the Swedish way. Coffee, of course, but if you prefer tea, you can also do that. And Håkan, do you want to share about our Global Azure Sweden event coming up this month as well?
Yep. So later this month, there is the global Azure community event. So there are communities all over the world who are inviting you to join their communities to learn about Azure. And we are also doing the same thing here in Azure User Group Sweden. So you can join us on April 20 for a day here of different talks related to Azure. So just scan this QR code to register for the event.
Great. And before we can introduce our speaker today, I'm giving away ebook or ebooks to the best technical questions that Kim or us chooses. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the live chat, and we will answer or bring it to our guest Kim later on and get a chance to win a copy and read my book, the digital version. Great.
Yes. Yes. So now the moment that we've all been waiting for here is where we can introduce our guest here for today. So welcome, Kim Berg.
Hello, hello.
Hi. Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing just fine. Getting excited to do this presentation.
Yes, yes. And you are joining us also from Sweden. It's not so often, it's a Swedish Azure user group, and it's not so often we get like Swedish speakers on stage, virtual stage. And we're glad to have you today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I live right outside of Norrköping in Sweden.
Norrköping, yes.
Mhm.
Okay. We're just speaking Swedish on the backstage, and we had to remind ourselves to switch from Swedish to English so we don't confuse our audience, especially this is recorded. So go ahead, Okan. Let
Yes,
us
so a little bit
say.
more formal introduction here to Kim. So Kim Berry is the lead architect for cloud solutions and data A platform at Sogeti. So excuse me if I mispronounced that name. And he started the IT career as an operations technician with hosting data centers. But after a while, he found his love for the cloud around 7 years ago. And he started to specialize within Azure, and the passion just grew. And now, currently, he's working with enterprise scale AI, machine learning, and IoT solution and platforms as part of the Swedish National Center of Excellence at Sogeti. He's also a contributor to open source initiative, enterprise scale machine learning, and responsible for the solution accelerator, Sarah.
Thank you for the great introduction.
So, do you
Yes.
want to say a couple of words here to our audience about what you will cover today?
Yeah, exactly. So today we will do a discussion about prompt engineering for generative AI. So I will do some tips and tricks about that and my opinion on what prompt engineering really is compared to prompting. So some people will have a different opinion about that, but yeah, I will tell you my opinion.
That's
Yes,
that's
nice.
interesting. I look forward to learn from your session, Kim. Great.
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 Then we leave the stage to you, Kim.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So yeah, thanks for the super nice introduction. As Håkan said there, I'm a lead architect at Society, and a little bit about myself. Uh, Outside of working as an architect, in my spare time, I really love to dance. So I do a lot of dance practice. I actually have dance practices 4 times a week. So that's a really big focus on my spare time. And other than that, I really love to do different kinds of outdoor activities. For example, I do a lot of hiking, fishing, skiing now in the winter. That's a big passion of mine. I spend a lot of time on that as well. And also, I do a lot of different kinds of public speaking. These are just a picture of a couple of them. Just recently now, I spoke at Microsoft Ignite in Stockholm, in Sweden. And I've done some international speaking engagements as well. And yeah, as Håkan mentioned there, I'm a contributor to the open source initiative called Enterprise Scale Machine Learning, which is a Microsoft hosted open source initiative. So it's about scaling and productionizing machine learning on Azure specifically. So I've been working for quite some time within the machine learning area in Azure. So when generative AI blew up, it was a natural step for me to go into that. So I've been working with that for around 5 or so years, specifically with data AI and machine learning in Azure. But enough about me. So the agenda for today, I will start off, as I said there, my opinion on about what prompt engineering really is and what it's not. I think a lot of people use the word prompt engineering overly. Yeah, they use it too much actually, because a lot of the cases where I see it's being used, it's really about prompting. So prompt engineering, in my opinion, is something completely different. So I will go into that. And yeah, we'll start off with what is a prompt, just the basics of what it really is. I will go about the anatomy, how it's built up, how you actually build a prompt. And then we will go through some basic and advanced techniques, and we will end up with a actual real case on a solution that we have called Amplifier from Society. And I will go through how we will generate a test case from a user story and pretty much the journey on what we went through and what we learned during that journey. So how that solution is set up, go through that. But to kick it off, a little bit in a helicopter point of view for what generative AI is. So you have your fuel, the prompt itself, And after that, you have your engine where you actually transform and do a lot of things in between. And the destination usually is some kind of generated content. If it is in a chat context, it is your answer. If you're generating a picture, music, or anything like that, that is your destination. And all of this should be included into your intelligent applications. So generative AI should, and where it has the most benefit actually is when it's being included into an application, not when it's something completely by itself, from what I've seen. And I think that is the future as well, and what we will see. Pretty much every application will probably have some kind of generative AI, and it will be how you interact with the new way of interacting with data. I think it will be. So it won't be something special or something unique. It will just be something that you don't think about all the time. But if we go a bit into the actual engine, what is this part of that? So first off, you have your large language modules, and there can be a lot of different ones. The most common ones, what I see people talking about and what I will show in the demos and things, will be about the GPT models. But there are a lot of different open source ones, and the ones that OpenAI provision, and you have the Hugging Face ones, Mistral, and so on. There's a lot of different ones there. And then we come into the actual part where I think is prompt engineering. So when you actually do prompt filtering, meta prompting, and you have your different kinds of guardrails when you do response filtering, add in your business logic and all of that, that is what I see it actually as prompt engineering. So how you build and modify the actual prompts in a system, that is my opinion what prompt engineering really is. So it's something that you usually don't see at all. It's nothing that you can actually look at and see in a system. So the actual logic and things behind in the systems, that is how you build that is prompt engineering. And why I don't think the actual prompting itself is prompt engineering is because that is just natural text. You're just conversing and speaking with a generative AI. It has nothing to do with engineering in itself. It's just the use of the English language usually, which is the most common one that you use. So that is the biggest difference between those things. And some other parts that you have in the actual blueprint of what a generative AI platform is in the engine. Usually you have your grounding, so the indexing, so you can use your own data in the data platform. And I will do an example of that, how you can actually do it and why you want that, why it's needed in a lot of cases. And then you have your reasoning and actions. For example, you can build your custom copilots, so your different kinds of assistants, and you can use other existing third-party solutions and other kinds of plugins as well, and agents, for examples. But a lot of these things are actually something that we are familiar with, even since before generative AI. So for example, you have your data layer, the data platform in the back. So in the bottom here. So the only thing that is pretty much new and what is from the machine learning space is the handling of the actual models. But the handling of the models isn't a big thing anymore usually, because usually you just use your own deployment of it and just interact with it with APIs. So it's not as common that you actually do something with the models and modify them. In some cases you do, for example, when you fine tune and do things like that, but it's not that common. So most of the work is actually building the systems around this. So it's quite common development, and the new roles that you usually talk about here is generative AI, so Gen AI engineer or prompt engineer. That is the new kind of roles that are popped up based on this. But if we get back to the agenda here, so what is a prompt? Starting off with that. So a prompt is just the input that you give to generate some kind of desired output. So natural language text that you request something from the generative AI model. So yeah, perform a specific kind of task. So if we do an example of that, so here I'm writing, summarize the latest findings in the field of generative AI, give sources for further reading. And you will get a response back, and it will give you the sources based on what you asked about. So that is just a basic common prompt that you can use. And if we jump in a little bit about the actual anatomy, how is the prompts built up? What does it consist of? And all of these things are not something that is required. A lot of these parts are optional. But the more things you add in and the more things you do, usually the better kind of response you get back. But the first part, you have your persona or your context. And in that sense, it is what is the actual role that the model should play, and in what kind of situation are you interacting with it. The other part is the actual task or the instruction. So what should the model actually do? And this often starts with action word. And the next part is the input content, so the actual text that should be processed. And then we have the output and format. So do you have some specific requirement on how your actual output should look like? For example, do you want it in a bullet list or something like that? That's the output and formatting. And then you can add in additional information as well. So if you have any other kind of helpful context or some kind of background for it. But if you put this into actual context, how can an example prompt look like? So if you start off with the persona and the context, we can say, for example, as a professional marketing manager, please write a marketing campaign about the benefits of our products in an inspiring, upbeat manner, focusing on the benefits of sustainability, targeted towards manufacturing industry. So this is an example on how we can structure and build up your prompts. Going further, some basic techniques. These are just some of them. There are a lot of techniques, but I will not go into that many of these basic techniques. But these are some of them, and most of these basic ones are really just what the word says. For example, context expansion is just adding on a bit in the context you're talking about. Prompt reframing, rewriting your prompt. So it's quite basic, all of these techniques. But if we jump into some of them, for example, the zero-shot prompting, what is that? So zero-shot prompting is that you don't give the model any kind of context at all. So in this example, you want it to classify some text, and it should be into natural, negative, or positive. And you don't explain what that is at all to the model. And the text that it should process or do something about is, I think the vacation is okay. And then you tell it, I want you to give me a sentiment on this. And because most of these large language modules understands what sentiment is, it will give you a good response for this. But it doesn't have any context around these kind of things. That is zero-shot prompting, no context at all. Another one that we have is creative writing. And in creative writing, I want to give you an example on what that can be. So, for example, if we want to generate a picture. So in this case, we are using DALL-E, so DALL-E 3 in the playground. So it's the Azure AI Studio that we're using. And we can say we want a picture of a cat. That's just the basics, what we want. But we want it riding a unicorn, wearing a monocle. There. It should be in a futuristic style. So here we're explaining it in a creative way. So the creative part of this is it should be wearing a monocle specifically, and I want it in a futuristic style. So you're giving more context in, you want it to be creative in that sort of sense. So when you're doing this technique is always, you should always use it when you're trying to generate these kinds of context. So if you want to generate music or you want to generate any kind of pictures or things, it should be like that. So this is the result that we give. I wouldn't say it's riding it, but it has a monocle and it's quite futuristic. So yeah, it got almost all of it. It could have probably been more specific and I would have gotten a better context, but that's just an example of creative writing and what that is. So let's jump into some more advanced techniques. And once again, there are a lot of them. These are not all either. It's just some example of them and some of the ones that I think are mostly used and that is quite important to know about. But if we go, I will give some examples of some of these. But to explain some of the other ones, the ones that I think are really good, that you should try to use a lot of times, are, for example, the iterative prompting. And iterative prompting is when you try to use the previous response that you got them and do a follow-up question about that. So you can dive deeper into the actual topic, extract some additional kind of insights, and clarify anything if something was unclear from the initial output. So you're taking the previous one, building onto it, and giving it more context or adding in different kinds of information. So how you would use that would be, you should be really attentive to what is the initial answer, and then you can frame the follow-up prompt to elaborate on a specific part, for example, on the answer, or dig into a subtopic or seek some kind of clarification about that. So it's really useful, and I see that I use this a lot. So when I use any kind of chat GPT or Bing Copilot or something like that, I always try to do follow-ups to get a better response, and I've seen that is a really good technique to use. And other than that, something I think that will be really important in the future, in the context of using agents and trying to do more advanced things, is the one called prompt chaining in the bottom here. So prompt chaining is super useful when you try to accomplish some kind of complex task. So really complex tasks can be used. Because in those cases, the LLM usually struggle quite a lot to get a good response. But if you do prompt chaining, you can do a lot more, like transformative and additional processes can be added into it. So the responses usually become a lot better. And prompt chaining is almost the same as the one that I mentioned with iterative prompting, but instead of adding more context from your side, you will give the context of the answer you got and give that full context into the next prompt you do. So you're building on, you're prompting based on the previous prompt, pretty much, and giving that response into it. And what I said about the agents, I think that in the agent context right now, what is making it not that good is that it will hallucinate quite easily. So you get bad answers often because it usually derails really fast. And I think that kind of technique is something that needs to be bettered, and it will make the future for agents and actual building it into systems a lot better. So those two techniques I think is really important. But another one that is super important and makes logic a lot better with large language models as well is the one called chain of thought. And in this example, we get a faulty answer, as you can see. So this is just the example why it's being used. So here we say that we give it a logical question. So we're asking it about a mathematical thing, pretty much. So we say that we have these many apples, and a lot of things happen. And in the end, how many apples do I remain with? And the thing is, large language modules are not knowledge models. It is just a language model. So if you give it this kind of things, how the models work is it's trying to give you the most probable next word. And in that case, it's not good at math and logic. But how you would do this, a simple technique how to use chain of thought is just to tell it, think step by step. So you don't need to add anything more to it at all. Just telling it in the end, think step by step. And if you do that, it will actually give you the reasoning why it gives you the answer. So instead of just saying, it's this, which was faulty, it will tell you that, okay, we started off with this, then this happened, and after that, this happened, and this. So the result is this. And another way of using chain of thought is actually to give it the reasoning as well, not just only telling it, think step by step. So you can do it by saying the exact step in the bottom here. So first you start off with this happened, this happened, this happened. What is the answer? So instead of just saying that line, you can actually give it the reasoning logic as well. That's the same thing pretty much, but an easier way is just doing it and saying things step by step. It's the simplest way. And another one that we have is retrievement augmented generation. And if you have seen anything about generative AI, you most probably have seen this word. It's really common, and it's actually what I've seen the most common first step that companies do when they try to look at generative AI. So the first thing you usually do is figuring out that, okay, I needed to understand my business, not only what has been trained on the internet and what it can find, my actual business logic. So the data that I have privately within my company, it needs to be used to make any kind of sense in a system. So in that case, you usually use RAG. And what RAG does is you use, in the Azure sense, and what I will show you, you usually use the AI search service in Azure. It's the most common one, and it's really simple to set up as well, and I will show you. But then you actually query your knowledge. So you're adding on the actual knowledge to the model. Because as I said, it's not a knowledge model, it's just a language model. But with RAG, you add in the knowledge. So it will actually augment and add that kind of knowledge to your prompt before it gives you the response back. So let's jump into that then, and I'll show you a little bit what it is. So back here in the playground, we can go over to the chat instead of images. And first off here, we're just using the GPT 3.5, the base model, nothing else added to it. So in the context, we can ask, it that, what is Sweden Azure User Group? And it will give an answer about that. But for example, if I try to ask it something like, what are some upcoming events? It can't give me that. So it can't give me real-time information or something that is current, because these models are trained up into a certain point. I mean, it's being added newer and newer information all the time to these models, but they're not real-time, so they don't have current information. So in that case, we want to add on retrieval augmented generation, of course. And a really simple way on how you can do that in this environment, in the playground, you have this little tab up here that's called Add Your Data. So if you go into Add Your Data, I've actually preset this because it takes some time to actually do the scraping and the ingestion of it. But I will select an index that I've already defined, and it's called Azure User Group Sweden. So what this specific index has, and what I did, I took the event page of the Azure User Group Sweden meetup group. So I took the event page of that, and I just scraped that entire URL. So in this index, we have the context of that specifically, so it understands this. So if now I ask the same question, so can't spell. You can misspell, it will work either way. But now if I ask it, what are some upcoming events in Azure User Group Sweden? Then it will tell me that the two upcoming events that are available right now is the session that you're listening to at the moment, and the one that was mentioned here in the intro, so Global Azure Sweden. And it will tell you the date and a brief description. And now you can ask on more questions about this in this context. And what it will also do is give you references, so you will see exactly where it fetched the information. And in this case, I just scraped the URL, so it won't tell you anything more than just the HTML pages. So nothing special there.
Yeah, so Kim, we actually got a question here from our audience.
Yeah.
It's a question here from Yusuf Tamel, who asked, thank you for this session. When I provide some personal or organizational data during prompting behind the scene, does generative AI use this data for the other users' prompt to answer them?
It depends on what kind of models that you're using and what services you're using. And so in the example that I'm showing right now, when you use all of the Azure services, so this is using the Azure OpenAI service. In Azure OpenAI, you have the privacy and security promises from Microsoft that they never retrain their models based on the prompts and the information that you provide to the actual models. So in the case of Azure OpenAI, you don't need to worry about that. But there has been a lot of examples where that has been the case. The biggest public ones that I've seen about has been, for example, there was one really early when they released a lot of the services in the GitHub Copilot before you had the enterprise versions with the same promises. There was an example of a really big phone company, I won't say the name, that a lot of their developers had actually prompted and asked about some of their internal code, so their own IP in code-wise. And then afterwards, somebody asked a question that pointed directly to the same kind of things, and they got an answer back with the IP of the company. So there has been a lot of those cases as well. So you need to be really careful about what kinds of models and what kind of services that you're using, because in some senses that can happen. But when you use, for example, the Azure services, that's not a worry.
Okay, thank you.
Great. But yeah, that was retrieval augmented generation, so RAG. And going back to the presentation, we have some other parts. And another advanced technique is something called generated knowledge. And this example is just, once again, why it's needed. So first off, you're just giving the prompt that golf. So the goal in golf is to get higher points. So a higher point total than others. Is the answer yes or no? And it says yes. And of course, that is not correct. That's not the point and not the goal of golf. So in the case of generated knowledge, what you do is that you give it a question and you provide some knowledge, some extra knowledge within your prompt. So in this example, you give the full explanation of what are the rules of golf. That is the knowledge that you provide. And in the end, you tell it to explain and answer in the end there. And in that sense, we get a correct answer. And it explains why as well, based on the generated knowledge. So that is something that you want to use in that sort of sense. Great. Now that we've gone through some of the techniques that are available, I will show you an actual case on the actual service, or so to say, that we have built. So I will tell you a story about how you go from a user story to a proper functional test case. So what we did, and the starting point. The starting point is this is the user story that we want to build a test strategy around. So based on what this is, it is, as a cinema goer, you should have some dynamic kind of pricing, and the different criteria how it's based are specified here in our user story. So there are some time-based discounts. You have some additional add-ons and things. You explain how the booking process looks and how the error handling looks as well. So this is our full user story that we're using here. So the first part and the first prompt that we did. So this is actually iteratively how we built this service and how to generate tests and a testing strategy. So the first prompt, super simple. Just act as a testing expert, generate test cases from a user story, and then you're providing that user story. So just 11 words, the first prompt. We saw that, okay, the result was not that good. So we got 12 valid test cases, 6 invalid ones. And there was a really big, so a lack of consistency. We saw that every time you asked the same questions, you got completely different results every time. And in a lot of cases, they were completely faulty as well. The redundancy and everything didn't work. So it was really clear that you had a full lack of domain expertise. So it didn't work properly. So the first iteration and prompt number 2 became 83 words instead. So here we're just providing it a little bit more. So the title, we gave it a primary directive, how it should build this kind of testing strategies. We gave it some guidelines and a final directive, and also how it should interact with the users. And based on that, yeah, it was better. So it improved a lot. So we got 12 valid cases, 8 invalid. But yeah, the problems were we had a lack of standardized formatting. So the formatting was all over the place. In some cases, it was really structured, almost like a table. But in some cases, it was almost unreadable and really hard to understand. So the formatting changed a lot. And there were no clear verbs. We had no dependencies. And the boundary conditions, so the boundary testing of actually checking the edge cases of the ages, for example, it was really unclear as well. So yeah, we had a lack of actual versus expected. But going on from that, prompt number 3, it was 440 words. So it's it's building on. It's becoming bigger and bigger with more context in it all the time. So in this case, we got 11 valid cases, 8 invalid test cases. But in this case, what we saw that we had quite poor readability. So once again, the formatting, not that good. A lot of irrelevant text as well. So a lot of just filler text that didn't make any sense in the case of test strategies. And also real lack of direct application. Once again, no integration at all. The next step is quite a jump up. So prompt number 4, we went all the way up to 1,308 words in the prompt. So as you can see, it's quite a big prompt. But in this case, the improvement we saw, it was a lot more structured. So we got really good structure in this case. So the jump from the previous one to this one, that was the biggest change. Really good structure. So the formatting was proper this time. But actually, from the previous one, we saw that the quality got even worse. So the quality got really, really bad, actually, in this case. So the coverage and precision was becoming even more worse. So from this stage, we actually saw that, okay, what should we do? Why did it become like this? Because we were a lot more detailed. So why did this happen? And something that we found out was, okay, we want to split it. So the different prompts we should have one prompt that is specifically targeting valid functional testing, and it's one for invalid functional. So the difference, I mean, the valid one is you're looking into. We can take the example again from the use case from the user story that the age brackets, you're testing something that is fully in between the ages. So it is working as intended in that sense, the valid ones. And the invalid ones is something that shouldn't work, isn't working either. That is the case of invalid functional testing. So not working as intended, you can tell it. So in this sense, we saw that, okay, the actual functional, the valid functional testing was really unique, all of them. The responses you got, really clear, super reusable, retraceable. It was exportable as well. But we had a really big lack of exhaustivity. So the actual use cases, we didn't get that many actual use cases back. So the options for the different cases were, got shortened. But in the sense of invalid functional testing, it was really good. We were really happy with what we got there. So it was, again, unique, clear, usable, consistent, really traceable as well. And it was exportable. So we saw no issue with that. But because we weren't fully happy with the valid functional ones, we decided to, once again, split that prompt up into 2. So in the end there, for the valid cases, we saw that we needed to split it up into a happy path and a boundary path. And again, the happy path is you're trying to test for example, again, the middle of the age spans. So now something that you know and it's easy to test about, that is pretty much the happy path. So something in between things. And the boundaries in the example again of the ages are if there is a age bracket that ends on 18, you want to test on the age of 18 or 65 if that's a bracket as well, or in the edge of the time as well. That's the boundary testing of that. So yeah, this is pretty much the end product that we saw that we wanted to do. So we had happy path, boundary, and invalid. So we split it up into those 3 different prompts in the end. And something that we learned is we saw for an instruction-driven prompt, it's really good to have all of these 9 things included in it. So you should include the title, the primary directive, some kind of guidelines for actioning, specifications for AI analysis, some principles. You should add in the guidelines. You add in a final directive. You specify the output format, and you specify how the user interaction should look like. But another thing that we saw, because now we had a really big prompt, as you saw, 1,308 words per prompt. That's quite a big prompt, and you pay for the tokens, so it will cost you. So another thing that we saw that you could do it example-driven instead. So we're utilizing one of those advanced techniques that I showed you. So instead of giving it the full instruction, you can take one of the actual good cases that you got. For example, if you have the happy pathing one, the prompt that was used for that, the output that you got from that prompt, you can take that and give it, okay, this is an example on how I want you to build it instead. So we saw we could decrease it down to, I don't remember exactly how it was, but around like 800 words or so instead in the prompt. So we got pretty much the exact same response, but we could shorten the prompt, so lowering the cost of actually generating the test cases. So some other things. What did we learn then? Well, what we learned was that in the technology area, we saw that you should really handle all of your prompting as code. So utilize everything that we learned so far from developing. I mean, using CI/CD and handle all of your prompts properly as code. So yeah, your prompts are pretty much your IP, because that is the logic that you're building into your system. So the prompts are super important in that case. And also in the technology area, it's really important to have domain expertise. So in the example I showed you, it was about testing strategy. So testing is something that we as Society are really good at. Me personally, I'm not. So I wouldn't be the one writing these prompts because I'm not an expert in testing. So we need that kind of domain expertise. And in the actual usage, still where we are at the moment with generative AI, the quality of the output is not guaranteed still. So we're some ways away to actually have that you can actually trust it fully. You can do that more and more now, but still, we're not fully there yet. And I mean, generative AI isn't fully matured yet. How the reports look and how we expect it, I think it will be mature in about like 2 to 5 years. We will have full maturity, but we're not there yet. So some of the quality of the output is not guaranteed. And because of that, a lot of experts are critical as well. But I think, I mean, you can use the things that you get right now, but you need to be critical. So you can use it as inspiration or actually look through what you get as the responses or the output and modify it. And yeah, it's still usable. It's not that so. And yeah, you have some efficiency to be contextualized as well, was something that we saw in the usage part. But let's actually look at how this looks in the proper system. So if we take this exact same user story and we try to generate a test case, how might that look then? So let's see. Here we have the solution that I mentioned. It's called Amplifier. So it's the platform that we have with a lot of different use cases. We have a lot of testing specifically in this, but also some other infrastructures code. So you can actually plan, design, and do a lot of other things for test cases. But right now it is focused on testing. So in this application, this website, you can decide what model you want to use. And the only thing that you do here pretty much is you decide what file, so what is the user story that we want to use. And in this case, we use the exact same one that I showed you before. So just a quick preview. You can see that is the exact same user story. And here you can decide on what kind of path do you want it to be. So as I said there, what we decided in the end that you have the happy path, the boundary, or the invalid. So let's test it out with invalid. We can do that. And then you can also add in some additional behavior patterns if you want to. So some optional additional information. But if we generate this, let's see if it takes too long or if it goes fast. We're not using reserved. I mean, in the sense of if this would have been a productionized system for our clients, which we have some clients that are using it, then of course you're using some kind of reserved utilization of the actual models. But in this case, we're not. It's pay as you go. So in some cases, it's not trustable. It can take a long time in some cases if you don't have the throughput. But yeah, we got it back. It took 14.6 seconds. So we'll get some additional information here in the top. In the end here, we used 4,984 tokens. And you can see the price as well. What did it cost to generate this test case? And in the beginning here, we can see how did it build this test case. So this is pretty much the full instruction on how it did it. So we can see here we have the executive these different steps that I showed you that we found out was really important to use and really good to use. You have your executive summary, the user story, some summary, negative test cases, la 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 la. So it explains how it will build the test case. And below here we have the full test case actually. So the summary, the user story itself, just a recap of it. And yeah, here we have some more elaborative explanation on the different cases that we have. So you can see, for example, here, you should test for invalid age. So if anything is below 0, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. So no minus age. You need to be born. and also invalid age is, yeah, above 150. And we can see some other things. So yeah, this is trying to test some invalid parts of the system. That is the point of it. But pretty much you can do all of this and just add it in as a testing strategy. So you can download it as a Word file or a zip file, or you can just take out different parts of it. So yeah, this is pretty much the example that we have on how you can do that. And again, you can change it to try to do it with another model, see if you get a better result, and change up your user story and do things like that. And yeah, add in additional behavioral patterns if something didn't match completely what you wanted it to be. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And let's go over. I'm not sure if we got some questions along the line, but if we have some, we can take them now.
Yeah, we don't have any question as of now, I think. But I have a general question here for you, and thank you so much for the presentation. Because you were mentioning that when you have this really big prompts, you should be careful, or at least you should be observant on how many tokens you will spend. So can you say some general things about the cost of a solution like this?
Yeah, as you saw in the end there, for the actual test case generation that we had a number. So we had a price. What did this specific one cost? So let's see, how much was it exactly here? So for this full one, when we used 4,984 tokens, the price of generating that was $0.00819. So I mean, even though you're using for this specific one, when you just generate one, it's not that important, perhaps. But in the long run, I mean, if you do this a lot, and I mean, if you have a lot of users in the system, because this is just one of the things that you can do within this specific one, the amplifier that you saw. When you add on a lot of users and you do a lot of things, the token will matter. So in the end, it will cost more. But okay. I mean, per token, if you use the correct model, it's not that expensive. So in the example you saw here, we used GPT 3.5. If you use GPT 4, the cost bumps up a lot. You will, in a lot of cases, get better answers. In a lot of cases, you don't. So you need to find out what model is best for the different use cases. And that will be a cost aspect as well.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for the answer, Kim. While you were answering, there were actually three questions that came up
Oh,
on the live chat. Not just in the live chat, but in different channels from both YouTube and two from LinkedIn, because we're streaming in parallel platforms. So let me take, if it's okay with you, Okan, let me take one of them. Let's see, let's show it. So we got a question from Yosef Timel. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. He asked, could you please explain a bit the data feed process and to ingest data sets into generative AI models? And then another question related to it, what is the technique and logic that Microsoft or OpenAI used to feed AI models?
yeah, there are two parts of the answer for that. One part is how you actually train the models, because that is how I mean, how Microsoft and OpenAI does it. So the training, in the training, mostly how they've done it so far, they're using vectorized databases. So you're using different kinds of techniques when you actually train the model itself. So the training part, I mean, a lot of the cases are quite black boxy still. So a lot of things, it's not transparent. You don't know exactly how they train all of it. But the techniques you're using is vectorizing databases and actually running full machine learning to actually train it. So it's like transformers models, and yeah, there's a big process of that. But another thing, which I think you're asking about as well, is how you can do it yourself as well, how you can actually give more context into it. So for example, as the example I showed about RAG, retrieval augmented generation, in that case, you're actually not training the model at all. You're just using indexes to ground your prompts. So you're adding context to your own prompts when you do that. So in that case, you're not retraining the model at all. There is a part of fine tuning that you can do as well. And then you need to do the same thing. You need to structure your data, or vectorize is the best example of how you get the best results, what I've seen. Then you need to vectorize your own data and then retrain the model. But in the sense of RAG, and what I recommend to start off using in pretty much all cases is to use indexing instead. So don't go straight for fine tuning, because fine tuning is expensive. You need really massive and like costly infrastructure to run that. So it's not good to start off with that. In some cases, fine tuning is better, but let's start off with indexing. And when you do indexing, it's using the same techniques. So you're doing, in the example of AI search, which I used in the RAG case here, and you can decide if you want to use keywording, if you want to use semantic or vector search as well. But it's pretty much a search service. So you're splitting down, you're taking your full data, you're dividing it into chunks, so smaller parts, and then you're actually adding that context back into the model. That's the simplest explanation I can give. Otherwise, it will be a full session again. I could do a full session just about vectorization and that as well. But that's the simplest thing I can do, at least.
All right. Thank you so much, Kim, for answering that. I hope Yosef got is satisfied with the answer. So, do you want to read the next one? We have Hokan on LinkedIn. I think three
Yes.
questions, but it relate to each other, I think.
As the next question from LinkedIn here is from Rambo Sunil Jacob, who asked, how did you integrate testing?
Into that specific solution, then I guess. I think it was built on the other parts of that, right?
Yeah. He did ask kind of like a particular follow up. I think. Did you use any particular technology like Selenium in the pipeline? So it may be that those two are related.
Yeah, and exactly. And then I think the last one is
Mm.
also related. How were you able to plan for testing? Right, that was the last one. Yeah.
Yes,
Uh,
that's right.
I mean, there are a lot of things in this that I can't talk about. A little bit of secrets. It is a system that we're trying to utilize for our own, but and also, I mean, I was part of doing some small things about the solution as well, but I haven't been part of actually building it properly. So if you want to, you can reach out to me, and I can connect you with the right people, or I can find out that information. But I don't have that currently, so I can't really answer that right away.
Okay. All right, let's grab one more question. When we are, this is from YouTube. Pranita asked, when we are dealing with dynamic data sets, how can we adopt the prompt engineering process?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that should be considered when you write that, I guess. But I mean, that's the beauty, I think, of generative AI. You shouldn't do too much, so you only get. I mean, it shouldn't be static. That's the point I'm trying to get across. So the point should never be to get the exact answers, the exact same answers. That shouldn't be the point, I think. I mean, you should utilize generative AI for what it is. It should generate something new. And ensure some parts you want to be consistent, but some part you want it to be creative. And so I don't think you should overdo it. Yeah, for the parts, for example, if you want formatting and some parts of the quality, sure, that you can adopt into your strategies. But don't overdo it. That's pretty much the point, I would say. Try to use the different techniques, and it's super. I mean, depending on the use case and what you want to do, different techniques works better. So just try to do it the same as I showed you. I mean, do it iteratively. Start out with something and try to make it better. Try to build on from what you have.
Yeah, great
Okay.
answer.
We
Yeah.
also have a question.
Hmm?
Next question is from LinkedIn. What are the best practices that should be considered for using these models for test strategies?
Sorry, again, really general question. So the best practices. I would say try to some best practices. Things I've learned as well would be to try to use the smaller and the more cheaper models to start out. Don't go straight off for the newest fancy ones. It's usually overkill. So, for example, as you saw, I had the availability to use the new GPT-4 ones, but in the case of test case generation, I won't get any better answer. Pretty much, the result in most cases won't be better, but it will cost me a lot more. So be picky about what models you use for the different use cases. Same goes for everything. Testing is, yeah. In that case, there isn't a one model that is best for everything, and same goes for everything, not only in testing. So test out the different models and see what performs best. In a lot of cases, what I've seen, I mean, GPT performs good in general in most things, but I mean, a lot of models outcompete them as well in specific parts. So, for example, if you want to use code generation or things like that, from my knowledge, I've seen that Mistral performs better in those cases, in a lot of cases. So, and yeah, I
Yes.
think that's it.
All right. That's great. I think that's all we have, Håkan, right? All
Mm.
questions from different channels.
Yeah, actually, I had one more question. So, what would you recommend, Kim, here, if someone has been watching this session here and they would like to get into generative AI? Do you have some tutorial or some starting place where people could start?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I've seen some really good ones at Pluralsight. There are some good cases to just start off with that. But also, I mean, just in Microsoft Learn, there are a lot of good tracks specifically for generative AI and how I want to utilize it. And in those cases, you also get a lot of labs, so you can test it out yourself. But other than that, I would say start using the different, either if it's the ChatGPT playground or the one that I showed you, the Azure AI service playground. So I use the playgrounds a lot. And usually when I start out doing use cases or new applications or whatever, I usually start out in there with the playground. So because in there you can tweak a lot of things. You can change the temperature, how creative it can be, and you can modify your system message and all of that. But so I think it's a really good part. Just start writing things, test it out.
Yes, that's a great question. I have a question, I think, but I think I'll save it in our Zoom meeting after. So we do have a 15-20 minute virtual fika, live private chat on Zoom. So if you want to join us and have more questions to Kim, feel free to join us on Zoom right after we end the stream and go to bit.ly link Azure Sweden Fika 0406, today's date. And Kim will be there as well, and grab your coffee or tea if you want. But thank you so much for those that ask questions, and even to Kim for a great and well delivered session. Do you have anything else that you want to share to our audience watching us live or recorded in terms of like learning references, QR codes, or upcoming events that you will be involved with?
I have some upcoming sessions. I mean, most of them are international ones. I mean, the biggest one is in Budapest in September, where we will talk together. You will
Yes,
also be
I
there.
will also be there. Yes.
Yeah, but I have a lot of things that I'm thinking about, but nothing specifically that is planned at the moment. So I'm waiting for answers for most of it. But other than that, I mean, just my general recommendation as always is start doing things, test it out. So get hands-on experience and test things out. That's the best way of learning, what I think at least.
Learn by doing.
Yeah.
Like in everything. All right. Håkan, any words that you want to share before we finalize our stream today?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for a very interesting session, Kim.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. And before we end, next session will be not the normal session. We will be having the Azure the Azure Global Azure Sweden by Azure User Group Sweden. So we will be having a special kind of event track where we have several speakers from 12 noon to 3 p.m. Track. So as part of the global initiative of Global Azure. So we have great speakers coming up, and don't forget to register using the QR code that we have today. All right, so it's time to switch to the after session fika, and wishing everyone a happy weekend, and thanks for spending time with us.
Take care.
Bye. Take care.